So good afternoon. Welcome to Personal Life Coach 2, and I am Chaplain Glover. So today we have a wonderful guest today, and the topic is touching on mental health and the mental health communities. So today is Mental Health Month, so it's a very important time to talk about these issues, how it impacts the community and how it impacts individuals, maybe how it impacts you. So we're going to talk with Mr. Anthony Brown and talk about some things that's been happening recently during the times, and maybe during COVID and also post-COVID. So here is Mr. Anthony Brown.
All right, how you doing out there, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls? Pleasure to be here today to touch bases on, I think, what is a major concern for us all when we're talking about mental health. In a challenging past 2 years, for me personally, as a husband, losing a wife of 40 years of marriage, grandson born in the height of a pandemic, losing close loved ones as a veteran, and being known to many on active duty right now. And more recently, the string of deaths aboard one of our aircraft carriers. So there's a lot going on, a lot to talk about, and hopefully we can, kind of navigate some of this in an effort to come up with some quick solutions in the moment. Mental health is not a mental health month. It's a mental health moment of ongoing crisis. So, yeah, we can think outside the box and let's see what we can do at a lower level with the resources that we have available every day to us.
Yes, that's a good point. And so I think it's important that people also know that mental health is very important. So you have healthy mental health, and then we have mental health that has challenges. So there's severely mentally illness. There are individuals that may develop a mental illness from a trauma. And then there is the organic part where people may be born with some type of mental illness. You've heard of schizophrenic, or some people have organic challenges where they repeatedly suffer from severe depression. But then there's also healthy mental health. So we're also going to talk about that before we finish up today. What are some important things that Anthony had just brought up about some resources when it comes to mental health? And I think that's an important area that we need to know, that mental health, when it is healthy, also has to be taught. Healthy coping skills, healthy people we can go to when there's difficult times. Just like he said, he talked about a recent loss of his spouse. Who are the healthy people that he can tap into to help him overcome that? Healthy places you can go to deal with situations when challenges come up and your mental state is not in the best state at that time. Where can you go? So we'll talk about some things, and I have a question for Mr. Brown right now. So what is the mental health gap that you see in the military and civilian communities? Because Anthony is a good position. He's a veteran, so he has good background with the military. He works with veterans, and also he's a civilian. And so by you being a therapist, what is some of the gap that you see among these communities?
I think it's an accountability and recognition gap. Who's responsible for the mental health well-being of another human being? In the military, no doubt, it's leadership. Those are the individuals that are responsible for the individuals, the mission, everything. So without question, it's leadership. As a civilian in the home, Is it the parent? Is it the clergy on Sunday? Is it City Hall, state, local, federal government? So there's an identity crisis going on who's responsible for mental health. Is it the individual? So when we look at mental health, that's why I like to always break it down to bite-sized pieces as how do I get through a moment of crisis with a quick connection to enable me to do that.
Okay.
And so that is the difference, I think. In the military, there's no question we have somewhere to go. As a civilian, that could be quite challenging.
Got it. So I heard you say with the military, the leadership, and sometimes a lot of the leadership, they don't even know how to really identify mental illness. We know there's plenty of briefings, they're talking about it, but I can remember when I was also active duty and people needed to go to appointments, sometimes that wasn't a good thing. They were shunned on in the command. Why you got to go to this appointment today? Why you need to go to that appointment? How many appointments you have? And so sometimes the importance of it is not always recognized in that community. Can you relate to some of that, Tony? Do you remember some of that?
Absolutely, because put your mental health moment on the back burner for the mission. Let's go ahead and table that. Let's get back to the mission. Because you schedule. Everything is based around the mission rather than the moment. And when you look at the different levels of leadership, I can recall being a young senior recruit all the way to retiring as a chief petty officer. There was always an opportunity to be both mission-oriented and scheduling mental health time to address those small moments to get individuals through. Mm-hmm. So I was always uncomfortable as, a young senior recruit in the Navy, perplexed by why do we never take a moment for self-care, to manage these small crises, to intervene. We're more reactive than proactive. And then when there was a summary of mishap, there was always a stand down when we should have stood down before we stood back up.
Way before, yes.
And I never could connect with that. So when I did get a little leadership and authority under my belt, I always loved to talk to human beings, mm-hmm. Not the petty officer, not the chief, not Chief Brown, but Tony, Leon, Evan. Let's talk. That enhances the mission because we're promoting the self-care and safety. And we're addressing rather than suppressing, putting it on the back burner.
Exactly. And so I think it's important when you talk about the military leadership for active duty, that the leadership continues to stay grounded in the services that's provided to the sailors and the soldiers out there. So if it's a wellness program that's on the base, or if it's on the ship, if it's knowing the FRG programs, if it's understanding military one source, but also at the deeper level and closer level is understanding where your sailor and soldier is at that moment. So we can understand how to get them to the service and to connect with them right away. So now let's move to the community. So you said there's a gap in the community as well. And of course, that's evident because you see it growing rapidly. Sometimes you can see mental illness in music industry. You can see it in the film industry. There's a big court case. I don't think I have to say what's going on between two individuals right now.
Absolutely.
And you can see some mental illness in there, right? So it is big in the community, and a lot of people don't know where to turn and what that gap is. So us as individuals, understanding what mental illness is, we have to be able to understand the different sources out there and what can some people do. So for me, what I think is first, the family members, like you said, at first level, really recognize what's going on with your family member. Once they're in a relationship and you see something that's difficult, really be honest about that, what's going on, and help them get some help. Help them get some help. There is a mental health agency in every single city in the state. There are what they call mental health agencies and community service boards to help individuals. You can also go to SAMHSA. SAMHSA is a website that can give you plenty of resources and connection for that, okay? There is the, now help me out, Tony, NIMHI.
There you go.
It's been a while since I used that one.
Yeah, there you go. You know, we got a lot of acronyms.
That is the other one. So that is another acronym. And, but for our community, Tony, what are some gaps that you see, even for young people? Because young people, they're not really talking, they're texting and they're Snapchatting. So how can we reach somebody in the community that may be just struggling with something that could lead to a mental illness?
Well, first of all, we have to be vigilant, and there's no question. And, you know, I'm not going to try and filter this because I'm a veteran. The ununited state of America right now is dangerous, it's scary, it's divisive in our generation. I'm a baby boomer. I should be taking a step back, and when asked, give sound advice to let these youngsters grow this nation. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Not instill my baby boomer values because I'm not comfortable with what I'm seeing in the mirror. There's a lot of talent out there, but we don't highlight that. When we look at where I live right now, is considered an underserved community. Mm-hmm. When I look at the amount of taxes that I pay in a calendar year and what I have to pay back at the end of the year, is disheartening when I drive through the overserved, entitled community that reaps the benefit of that. And so when I come back to my underserved neighborhood, what do I see when I walk out my front door? What is happening on the other side of the door? We're not going to, the cavalry is not going to come in and rescue us. We have to take what we have. That pocket computer that they're linked to, it's okay for me to sit down and say, you know what, let's take 5 minutes. I want you to research a couple of things for me. Mm-hmm. I want you to schedule this time for some self-care.
So self-care.
Mm-hmm. Right, we have to use what we have. Sometimes we fight that. You on your phone all day. Stop, put it away.
Right. And those are big distractions that don't help.
What are you doing? Get off it. You're not. When in fact they're addressing their mental health.
Yes.
Because the world around them has been devastated by an unheard of pandemic, and just look at what they have to deal with. It's almost like if I see two people, a youngster and an adult, they're both struggling with mental health. Who do you think would need the most care for what they're going through and what they're about to go through rather than what they've been through? Can't you get to pick one? My focus at the moment is our youth.
I like what you had brought up when you first said in the communities, when you come out in the community and there's a lack of resources there. So the other point that is big is the resources that are in communities that lack resources are the people. So you being a person, and when you see other individuals that are in need, we can sit here and kind of refer them to somewhere, another person, another organization. California has lots of organizations to help people. So when it's a underdeveloped community, we can really look at all the organizations. When I went to the African American History program in Paris, there was abundance, I mean abundance of organizations out there for communities that are underdeveloped, that don't have the resources, that are willing to support and help. So that's one. The second one that I would like to really tap into is the churches. And so sometimes it could be a heavy one because churches, they provide a whole lot of support, but the other part is they're not sure how to. So I was recently reading statistics, and it says out of every 100 individuals in a church, 25 of them, those individuals have a mental illness, a diagnosable one. And a lot of individuals go to church because they're seeking help, they're seeking guidance, they're seeking support from God. They're seeking support from that ministry there. The other thing is some churches are afraid to tap into it. And so even though that's a good support, I don't want people to deviate from that because there are people like me and you in the church, okay? So they might not always find the umbrella of saying, hey, we're the church here to provide mental illness, but we can be the people in the church to make sure that we're connected with other people who are in those communities to help them, okay?
Absolutely.
So that's a big one. The third one you talked about is the home. You said the home. So there are a lot of unprivileged families. I don't want to use that word, really unprivileged. They don't have the resources or the means. And they really don't know which way to turn. So for that there, when they are seeking and going through mental health and really struggling in areas, what are some things you think that we can do to kind of really focus into that household? One, first, they got to be able to communicate. That's always number one. In a household that's broken, they usually don't communicate. They don't talk, and they don't trust, and they don't tell. Those are three things. They don't talk, they don't trust, and they don't tell. So what we have to have at the home level then branches to the school level.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So schools today lack teaching mental health for the homes. And I understand that is because of the statistics that they're looking at with the politics. They're trying to be politically correct, but we still can teach just the basis of mental health to everybody so that when it's back at the home, maybe that child, that student can recognize maybe there's some mental health stuff going in my household and there's something that needs to be connected, and who can I tap into these resources? So it is a branch. I understand it's a branch of things there when we talk about mental health, because when you don't know, they don't talk, that's where that suicide comes in. That suicide there. And then a lot of individuals, young people, they're connected to these cell phones so much. They're glued to the cell phones. They have access to everything that even can breed some things that aren't healthy. So those are my 3 points there, I think, where we need to tap into. Anything? Go ahead, Tony. I see you right there.
Yeah, because I think we have to, our vision has to change in our neighborhoods, because we expect certain things to change our neighborhoods, when in fact, I can recall actually being in a neighborhood
Yes.
No matter what block
Two.
I was on.
Yep.
My mother wasn't around. I decided to do something. You know what? Let me get stupid out here and say something, use profanity to do something. Then all of a sudden I hear, hey, aren't you Miss Brown boy? I'm like, oh man, what's this? But how I view a neighborhood is communication outside the home, eye contact. Good morning. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. How are you, young man? How are you, young lady? Seeing someone playing basketball, intervening with kindness in education, creativity. We have some of the resources there. We just don't connect to it because we're worried about our own. It's almost like I had one of my best friends growing up, and they were Hispanic, and they had a large number of family members in the home. In my culture, it was more or less grow up, get your own. And say anything about get ours, say get your own. So when we're looking at all of these different dynamics, there's an opportunity to have some fun with this. I watched a cricket game in San Diego one time, knew nothing about it, was waiting on my granddaughter to get out of basketball practice. And so I went over and just started talking to those individuals. Hey, what is the premises of this game? And first of all, I just happened to have my Desert Storm ball cap on. And immediately, thank you for your service. My response is always followed by a pleasure to serve. So now let's do the introduction. Let me get culturally aware of what's going on. So if I ever have that conversation, which I ultimately ended up doing with my grandchildren, some of their friends about the game of cricket, that's a new interest. We have resources that we don't use.
That's
right
so
in our neighborhoods. We do not attend town hall meetings. We do not attend as a group PTA. We do not know about our Chamber of Commerce. All we know is something's going on. I heard it on the national news, and it must be horrific on my block when it's not. And so there are small things that we can do. If you watch kids on the playground sometime, there's no barriers. You're just out there having fun.
That is true.
Then the older we get, we have to stop doing that. Hey, what are you doing over here with this integration stuff? You're supposed to be over here. So I think if we focus on our youth and check each other as adults, we can get some things done.
That's true.
And that education that you spoke of, or what would it be like to plan weekend, a day out of the weekend, to just let's go on a field trip. Look at some of these resources.
Yeah, I was thinking, like, I remember like when I was growing up, Dare to Care was real big, and that was the mascot. He was a dog, right? And so we would go, they would give us free concerts here in California. We would go to free concerts, we get free t-shirts. There'd be mega buses going all over the place for that. That was a part of mental health and instilling, you know, that if you get hooked on drugs, right? They would show you that egg fried on the pan, that this is your brain, right?
This
on
is
drugs.
The brain on drugs, yeah.
So the education even started at that smaller level, which is a part of mental health there. So I was like, well, I don't want my brain looking like that. And then, hey, if I can go to a concert and get some t-shirts and have fun, I'll go to Dare to Care. So I never missed a Dare to Care. But today you don't see that. You know, I know none of my children have never had an event like that. And the schools would let that whole day be a day to Dare Care day. And then, so we can start at those lower levels if it's just that. The other one is we also have to know how to take care of our providers. So if that is lay members at church, that they stay healthy. And then the other one, a therapist like you. So you're on the forefront and you are a provider. So how can we help be supportive there?
I'll give a prime example of self-awareness. And a lot of times it's human nature to be guarded. You know, hey, I'm good. It's like trying to connect a veteran to their benefits. They feel if they're not a double amputee or they, you know, hey, I'm walking, then I'm good. Well, technically you're not. You're separating yourself from your benefits, not mine, and one else is yours. And so when I look at, as a provider, one of the things that I do is all providers have to be self-aware. One of the things that we did in the military was before we ever sat down and talked about anything, anyone, or to anyone, we did a level check. Hey, what's going on with you today? What's going on with you? All right, you kind of not there, I'll take the lead. And then the beauty of how we provided care, we always had an opportunity because it was recorded to go back and look at that. So providers, it's okay to be the patient in an effort to move forward as a provider. So I would say in my most difficult time, when I decided to take a step back after losing my wife, Chaplain Glover, as well as Deacon Glover, and several other people took the lead in an effort for me to get the self-care and the mental health care that I needed in an effort to provide care. You know, one thing that, you know, I really wanted to I think about this every day. And it's small, but it kind of matters. I was in a situation in 1972 in Chicago and got to, we called my mom and I, we were just waiting to go shopping. And back then we had to wait in the back of the store. So it was a little, you know, 12-year-old, I'm kind of anxious. I'm looking around the corner, like, man, I can't wait to get in there. If I'm going shopping with my mom, we get ready to, it's going to be some good stuff going on. So I can recall an individual coming out, pushing me back, kicking me in the leg, telling my mother to give me a check, calling me the N-word. And I remember my mother grabbed my hand so tight that my focus wasn't on the wound on my left leg. It was her holding my hand so tight. And so I thought about all of that, but I had all this pent up anger. We get in the car. One of the things that, you know, I used to love when I was sitting in the back seat is to catch my mother's eye in the mirror looking at me. And she said, did she call me Tony? I know everything wasn't serious. She called me Anthony. Here it comes. So she said, Anthony, it was her best friend, was one of our neighbors. She said, tell me what's wrong. You know, in my mind, I'm thinking like, you already saw what was wrong. But I couldn't describe it. She said, you angry, huh? I said, yes, ma'am. She said, why? Because he kicked me, he disrespected you, and he called me and she said, you have just this one time to let that word come out of your mouth, then I'm going to tell you what to do with it. So she allowed me to say the N-word. And she said,
yes.
And she said, you have to understand, you have two options. You can know that you're not one, leave it in God's hand, or you can turn around and respond like one. She said, put your hand on your heart. So you can like, okay, put my hand on my heart. Now, this is self-care. This is mental health in the moment here. I didn't know it, but I learned it now. She said, you know the Pledge of Allegiance? I said, yes, ma'am, say it. So I said the Pledge of Allegiance. You know, you just keep your hand on your heart. She said, now, I didn't ask you to say the Pledge of Allegiance for the purpose of what you think. I wanted your hand on your heart, because if you ever let your emotions get above your heart, you're the one in trouble.
Okay. That was a good point and a good illustration she made for you at a very young age.
So the heart,
yes,
is one of the most treasured items that you, personal possessions that you could have. And
yes,
if you put your hand on it, in the moment, that can go a long way until we can get to some of those resources.
Mm-hmm. That is true.
I had to remember that now as an adult, what I do for a living. So when people think I'm saying the pledge, I'm getting myself prepared to be the provider.
Preparing to be the provider. That's true. So that's wonderful, Tony, because that's many ways that we can support, you know, being available, just being present. And your mom was present for you during that time. She saw what was going on. She saw what was happening, and she was present. And then she gave you some instructions to kind of help. So even though we might not always know how to instruct somebody, we can be present with somebody. We can just be there. There's a lot of people hurting. There's a lot of people really lacking the resources. So today I say it's very important, military, to be present in the individuals that's in your command. Civilians, be present to all the individuals that's in your presence. That might just take some time to get to know them. Family members, be present with your family. I know my young adults, they don't always like me being present, but I'm still going to show up.
Absolutely, because
show up.
You bet they want us present.
Oh, yeah.
In the moment of financial crisis.
Exactly.
Or shelter.
Exactly. So we have 2 minutes left with Zoom, because Zoom does a countdown when you get to your timeline. But I also want to say, be present, have God be present in your life. You know, if you're open to that, open your heart, take that in. And also that spirit will lead you to the people who you need in your life. Sometimes people just show up in your life and you're like, where this person come from that's helping out? Be open. And so sometimes you even might be led to go to another person and help that person. Tony, I really thank you for giving your time today. You work with many veterans, you work with many people. So just your last moments, you got a minute to kind of say what you want to say with mental health, and then I thank you for your time.
Well, always it's a pleasure. Anytime we can have these conversations, it's always nice that we have more. Communication goes a long way, breaking down those barriers. And I like what you said about prayer. That's the one resource that belongs to you anytime you need it. You don't have to ask permission for it. I never start my day out without praying. And at the end of that prayer, I always say, God, bind those who come with the intent to harm.
All right.
Bless and multiply those who come in peace.
Amen. So we're going to wrap on that. I want to thank Mr. Anthony Brown, who's a therapist who works with many individuals. And thank you for being with Personal Life Coach 2. I'm Chaplain Glover. You can reach out to me anytime. Thank you.